What's up, guys? It's Adam Thrower again, here with my kit shakedown. I want to talk to you guys about the kit that I wore when I was full-time law enforcement. So the last couple years of my time, I was a full-time task force officer on a federal task force, specifically focusing on violent criminals and gangs. So I'm just going to kind of go through the main kit I wore in that job and give some ideas to people that are in law enforcement of what to do or some practice ideas. Main thing before I get into my belt is just what I carried on me every day. Primary plain clothes. So I have a Tenacor inner belt that I can use with this belt, and I just have appendix holster. This is a Tenacor, I think a Malice Soul with my staccato, run a weapon mounted light, Acro on here, everything like that. And then I always wear a knife center line. This is just my Crooked Knives Lex T. It's a great, just a space creator, a defensive tool. For some reason I can't get to my gun. I always have that on my center line, and I can wear that with the belt over it. And then I always have a spare mag. This is a JM Customs older magazine carrier for my pistol mag. And so if I was going to this belt, actually doing some pre-planned enforcement actions or something where we needed to go from plain clothes to more kitted up, I can take all that off and then just run this over the belt that's currently on my pants. So I just tuck my shirt in and then go from there. Starting on this, so this is a Blue Force Gear chalk belt. Kind of a basic setup. There's gonna be things you notice that aren't on here. I'll kind of talk about those first. So my role primarily was, anytime we were kitted up, was running a long gun. I was never the less lethal. I was never the hands guy. We had people that filled those roles that had either 40mm launchers, tasers, other means of non-lethal tools to have for an enforcement action. I wasn't that guy, so I didn't have to have it on my belt, so this freed up some space. Obviously, if you need to have a taser, it's gonna change how things are lined up for you. Starting in the front, just a good old frag pouch. Don't keep a frag in it. This is actually for my handcuffs. I could fit 2 pairs in here, single pair, whichever. Just always had them on there. Kept it in the front, just a kind of dead space. I wasn't running anything else there. And that's actually, I think, a tier frag pouch. Next would be my holster, just a standard Safariland 6390 RDS. I do have a leg strap. I just have that kind of tucked for when I store it, so it's not just all dangling loose. It is on a True North Concepts modular hanger. This is just really great, helps give it a better platform, especially on this belt. And then moving to the back, I have a tier dump pouch. Most of the time, if I use this for anything, it was administrative purposes, and I would just have it open, and I would keep either gloves to search with after doing a search warrant, the initial entry and securing the house. And also I had to have 3 phones on me. So a lot of times once this is on and you have jeans, the pockets are useless, so I would just throw all my phones in here so I could actually access them. Working around, we have a spud pouch. So this is kind of just general purpose for me. I can throw a water bottle, an extra mag if I need to, whatever I want to in there. I just have some space, and when I'm not using it, it's just kind of folds up out of the way and isn't a big issue. The Gista is huge, and I was actually able to take a lot of things that I had to wear on my plate carrier and put onto my belt with this. So I have my pistol mag, my rifle mag. So those are my primary emergency reload for my rifle. I have other pistol mags, so this is a tertiary at that point. But inside, I have just different items. I have my earplugs to go with my OpsCore amps for the NIB or NFI stuff. I have a multi-tool, a little smart wool face covering, whether it's cold or if there is media presence or something like that. Just some gloves. And then I have little multitasker nano if I need to make any adjustments, and some of that's more for range use, but also for some reason if somebody's stuff came loose, I can do all that. And I would just keep this all in here, which is great, just really dead space otherwise. Before the Gista, I just had a single rifle mag pouch, and it just kind of, that's all it did. This, I'm able to do a lot more with the Gista, so that was a huge thing to add to my kit. And then on my handheld light, so I keep one in my pocket, but I always have one on my belt in case. This is an old Surefire G3X holster. It works on the newer G2Xs, that goes flying across the table. But this, if you see, it has a space for extra batteries. so you can keep CR123s in there. And I just have a Surefire G2X Tactical with a little Raven concealment pocket clip in case I need to throw it on as an actual pants light instead of just on my belt. But I always have a light mounted on my belt as well for a handheld. And then I have my 2 mags. A lot of people, 3 is probably overkill. I was just big on having pistol stuff. A lot of times, especially in my time before on the task force, when I was still working criminal investigation style stuff, my primary was a pistol. The rifle was always secondary at that point, and there was just times where I was out in some rural places and I didn't want to not have ammo on me if I needed it, so I run 3. You could run just 1, you know, whichever you need to, based off your needs, you have that ability, but that's why I ran 3. And then just a little carabiner up here on the front, hand gloves, whatever else. And that's the belt setup. You know, this was what I would live out of most of the time. Anytime it's a pre-planned enforcement action, this is getting thrown on. A lot of times this might even be on and I don't have my plate carrier on because I'm sitting in the vehicle and trying to maintain a lower profile until it's time. So this would be on, have the flannel, and then I'd throw the plate carrier on as we got out to do something, whatever. So that's the main belt, and I lived out of this guy for a long time. So that's a great setup. And let's move. The next, if you noticed, was med kit. So I don't have a med kit on my belt. There's times I've had different pouches. I've used like a medium GP before, everything like that. What I switched to was running a Fanny Sack. So I can either run this up front over my belt or move it around to where it's on the back side and it's kind of out of the way. I have the tourniquet hanging, and then on the inside I actually have an old insert from ATS that I keep in there, and then I have shears, emergency blanket, everything like that, and some loose gloves. But this has all my main IFAC components. So I have my gauze, gloves pre-open, so they're easier, some extra random gauze, chest seals, everything like that, and a just nice little easy to stow format. Like I said, this I can grab, I can throw over my headrest if I need to get something and I'm not wearing the belt. I still have access to this med kit because there might be a time where I'm wearing something different, but I still want to be able to throw this on, and so I didn't want it stuck to my belt. So that was a big reason to move this to a Fanny Sack, which works great. So this is my plate carrier. It's a LV-119. I've been using one in some form since 2019. Used a lot of legacy carriers before that, and I made the switch over and have stayed since then. There are some things, and I'll point out, which is a prototype, which is this front piece that we're kind of playing with. But other than that, this thing has gone through some changes since I've gotten out, just because new products that have come out, so I've just tried to adapt it to how I would still use it. So there has been some changes, and I'll kind of talk about those. But starting at the front, I have a Mark V Microfight, which is great. I have the triple 5.56 insert. I run 2 rifle mags in there, a tourniquet, and then I have this elastic panel on the front. Like I said, this is a prototype. And I can keep a bunch of different stuff. Right now I have a Sharpie there, I have a pair of pliers, just kind of miscellaneous use on those. There's not like a set thing, but just either accessing something, fixing something, trying to pry open some small stuff, I can do with those. This is a Liberty Dynamic flashbang. These are pretty cool, and these are non-controlled. There's a lot of tech into these, and this is just a really good place for this, so I put it there. Typically, and I'll show another kind of training bang that's in here, but my flashbang placement on that side when we get there. But this just gives me the option to throw a bunch of different stuff in there and be good to go, and so I do like that. The next thing, if you notice up here, this is my pry bar. So this is an old knuckle dragger tools. He doesn't exist anymore, sadly, but this is just a honkin' pry bar that I could use to pry into doors, interior doors, other stuff like that for whatever reason. So I just kept that on my plate here at all times. The little spud pouch, classic clean cloth, stole that from Counting Coup. So easy thing, be able to access, clean optics, whatever else. Then I have my push to talk. So primarily run a Disco 32. I've had to run different ones. So this is currently an APX setup. I have this XTS in here just to show that off. But There were times I had to run multiple radios, so I might have one on this side and then another on this side just based off what I was doing. There's times I was running Motorola APX, and then a Motorola XTS, and then a Sonum ruggedized push-to-talk, a bunch of different stuff just based off where we were working, what were we doing, and what capabilities we had supporting us, where I might have to have multiple radios. So I kind of always flex, but primarily this is how I would run my push-to-talk and my marine radio. Moving on down, we have a lunchbox. So mostly this stayed stowed in this current position, how it is. And this would allow me to just keep it kind of out of the way. But I kept a tourniquet all the time on the bottom of this, just stowed up. It's just an extra one that's dead space, otherwise not being used. And primarily I would use this to hold my gas mask when I know I needed it. So I have gas mask adapter for the microphone, for my old Peltors still in there. And the main compartment is just empty, but I'd actually just take my gas mask if I knew I was going to need it, throw it in there, and I was good to go. If I didn't need it, like I said, I would just keep it off somewhere in a bag, somewhere in my truck or wherever else, and then I would just roll this guy up and keep it out of the way, and then it's good to go. Other side of the Mark V, you see the TKO pouch, so just a place to keep a tourniquet. The pouch is nice just because it's going to protect it from UV, other debris and materials. And so with the Mark V, with that single row of MOLLE, that's a super great place to keep it. It's just kind of out of the way. So I like that. Moving on to my right side, I have an old Blue Force Gear, just 10-speed triple shingle. Like I said, sometimes I had to carry a certain radio or phone and it would fit in this size pocket, so I could just stuff it in there, and I would have the surveillance wires and stuff, and I'd route them up through the comm cable routing and stuff on the plate bag, but I would just stick it there as an out of place area. Otherwise, just have like a SWAT T tourniquet in here for some reason for smaller children, dogs or something like that, where a normal tourniquet application wouldn't work. It's just a dead space, so I could mount that there. As far as side armor right now, this is set up with 5x11 soft. So with the side armor bags, and then this is a large cap for the 5x11. So that just gives me that front side protection from any oblique threats. And a lot of times I'd also run 6x6 hard plates with this, or just by themselves. But I always like to have some sort of side protection as well on my plate carrier. And so right now it's set up with that. And if you notice, everything else is just kind of slick because that is my firing side. Going to the back, do have the assault panel core on here and the rescue or the recovery handle. That's huge. Love being able to have that just as a means to recover. When not wearing it, I would just clip it right here, but obviously it clips great to my belt when I'm actually wearing my plate carrier. In the main general purpose pouch, for me, usually didn't keep a lot in here. I just have a little SSE bag for some reason if I needed to use this. If we were doing some sort of evidence collection or anything, especially out on a hasty thing, like if doing a vehicle takedown or something like that, just so I could have something where we're not sitting on the hood of a car or on the ground so it gets lost, so I can put it in that bag and we can move to a more secure area to process evidence or anything like that. GP flap is on here right now. This was primarily what I would run. Usually, like I said, majority of the time this was empty. I sat in vehicles a lot for long periods of time, and this didn't create any issues for me because the way it stows. And then whatever I needed to put in here, I could. For some reason, if we needed extra flashbangs or something, someone was feeding off of me, we had that ability, and I could change this out. One setup that I have now with our new MOLLE flap is I have 2 TKO pouches. These work great for some of the smaller bangs. Then I had 2 spuds. So if this was something where I knew we needed extra munitions, such as bangs, whatever, I can throw this on and place the GP flap and be good to go, and just move my patches down there for identifiers, and we're ready to rock and roll. So this is a tall GP. This is actually an early version of the tall GP. This one has Velcro that you can see here. So this guy, mostly for me, is just batteries, other items that I would store in here. So I have some chem lights if needed, and then CR123s, a little Surefire container, some double A's, a little headband, everything like that. So this is just kind of administrative pouch, something that I don't need to access regularly, but I can get to by myself if I need to. But whatever reason, if someone needs batteries, I have some on me and they can access it. Next is another TKO pouch. This has a little training bang in it right now, but this is where I primarily carried my flashbang that I would have on my person when we're using them, just so I could access it if need be, or someone else could, but I could actually reach with my left hand and access it and utilize the bang. And so I just keep that right there. And then next is the spud for my radio. I've always preferred to run my radio on the outside of the cummerbund, and the spud, like I said, works great. Prior to the spud, I used a double M4 mag pouch. The flaps were somewhat problematic depending on what radio, but like I said, Motorola, APX, XTS, whatever else, this would fit everything that I had to, and I could change it out and be good to go. And so I've always liked mine there because I still needed to access the controls to change channels, do everything, because I didn't have like an MPU5 or something where I could do that from the push to talk itself. Then I have some shears, just an extra set of trauma shears in case I need to do anything, medical, whatever else. Those are mounted right there. And then I have another tourniquet that is just kind of secured by a rubber band to the cummerbund for access if I need it. And then lastly, hanging down is some electrical tape. Primarily used for this is more for explosive breachers. For me, it was just something where I had some tape. I've had to do rapid stuff in the field where either like repair or tape something up. I've used it for first aid. We had a guy who cut himself. I was able to take some gauze, wrap it around, and instead of using some medical tape I had, I just used this because it was hanging there. So just lots of different uses on that, and that guy's easy to do. And then lastly, I think I skipped over this guy, is just a headlamp. So store it here. If I need to, I can utilize it, read, whatever, and also I can take it off and mount it, obviously, to my head. And then a little Sanuto compass, just sometimes out in the rural stuff, for an open fields type thing, just having a way to reference what direction I'm at and my bearings was nice, especially working with air assets, to just kind of know if they're walking me on somewhere. I've got something, like I said, not something I used all the time, but it's there. Shoulder pads, I do have the Axle Advanced ones on here. Been kind of playing with these. Primarily I wore the normal trifolds, they work great. These do have a little bit more structure and foam for some guys that need them. I have a buddy that swears by them, so I told him I would run them and try them. So those are there. Other than that, that's pretty much my plate carrier setup. Like I said, nothing overly crazy. Try to keep it somewhat simple. And like I said, primarily this is for any enforcement action, was doing high risk arrest warrants, search warrants, vehicle takedowns, everything like that. So more from a investigative plainclothes type position, or either like a street crimes unit. There's a lot of parallels with how this kit is set up for that. If it was something for uniform patrol, there would be some changes. There'd be other things I'd have to carry, such as more non-lethal options. And so I'd probably have a taser here, other things like that. But yeah, this has been a great setup, and I've used it a bunch. So really like this thing. So like I said, primarily for me, if we were doing anything pre-planned, I'd be utilizing a rifle. And this is the rifle I actually used. So just an 11.5-inch gun. I did have a Surefire can on it when I was still full-time. So that'd be the only difference up there. B.E. Myers Mall, great laser. Love the heck out of that thing. Surefire Pro with a Model Light dual fuel head. It does help just push a little bit more into like tent and cars, other things like that. EOTech, this is actually on a LaRue riser that I had the gooseneck, and I actually cut that off myself. This is pre-Unity days to get it up a little bit. And the Unities are really nice, and if they existed, I would have bought one, but it's on there, so I've just kind of kept it. And then Nice Armament lower. This is an SBR lower, and then I have their ambi selector, which is really nice. Then we have the law folder. The law folder is great just for stowage, especially at times where this might be in the front of the vehicle, and I want to put it in the wedge in between the seat and the center console, and I need it to be a little bit more low profile. I could just break it down and have that. And then just a Magpul stock and a little Gray Fighter Sling retainer is how I prefer to run my sling. So keep it nice and stowed. Got the steer attack on there, and then if I got out, I could just rip it open. This usually would close itself and be good to go. So that was my primary rifle. This is the setup. Like I said, really handy, made it easier working out of vehicles, going to houses, everything like that, running 11.5 versus 14.5 or anything else. So pistol, said staccato as of right now, aim point acro P2 on there. Do run the Surefire X300 Ultra 1000 lumen. Just a great soft shooting pistol, 9mm, nice capacity for the magazines, and it just works great. I love the way this thing shoots. It's just super easy, and so this is my main carry gun now and duty gun. Oh, one thing to touch on, so I wanted to bring this. So this was actually the Mark IV that I ran for many years before the Mark V existed. So I did put the Axle high top zipper on there just because it was nice to keep some of that stuff. So if you see a lot of the stuff that was in my Gista pouch, this is where I used to keep it before the Gista came out, is I'd have to store a lot of it there. So I ran that, and then ran the same setup. So it was a 3 mag, so I had 2 rifle mags and a tourniquet, and then I hung everything else off the side, like the electrical tape and so forth on there. But this was the primary placard I used prior to the Mark V's. So that thing was cool. I'll never get rid of that thing. Now to the kind of expensive part, or the fun part, depending. This is my helmet. So on here I do have L3 1531s. Prior to these, I primarily used some Sentinels, so the old ruggedized Anvis, ground spec Anvis, so they were on a ball detent, which I did have L3 tubes in. This is a Team Wendy helmet, the ballistic. Then I have the SNS Precision mount with a Surefire Vampire head on there, so I can use this as an umbrella light with IR or white light, whichever. Some identifier patches. I do have the Ops Core amps, which are great. And like I said, these have the NFI capability with those inner ear plugs. Prior to that, I used Peltors, and I had some axle adapters, but these are great. Super comfortable and just way better than the old Peltor mounts, especially wearing it for a long time. Next on top, I have a little SNS Precision Manta. Again, not used all the time, but something either just to identify, it's common use. That's what it was for. This one is just a little green guy that'll light up, easy to do. It turns off, which is nice. And then I have IR strobes if needed on the actual battery pack for the 1531s. Then on the other side, it's pretty much just clean, another identifier patch, and that is it. And on the inside, I have just some 4G0 pads, which are super comfortable. And prior to the Team Wendy, I was running a Cry airframe, so switched the pads, some other stuff over to that, and just got a nice little helmet set up. And that is pretty much the basis of the kit I wore and as a full-time task force officer in a gang task force.